Hello, I'm a duck. Let's talk about feel. This is part 3 of my personal project titled Chill Light. I tried my best to illustrate a beautiful feeling and energy that I get from very specific songs and types of music. There were lots of different concepts that came from this, and to this day I think back about what I could do better to reach this energy. The first step to that is reviewing what we've got so far. So, let's get into the video. How do you feel in a crowd? For some, they're overwhelmed. Others feel right at home with the right energy. Depending on the circumstances, there are those who can, in a way, feel hidden. This is an abstract concept, the feeling of being invisible in your own space when surrounded. I've felt this contradictory state plenty of times and even induced it on occasion. Putting on a pair of sunglasses, putting in headphones, or even wearing a mask. It's a way of disabling the world's access to you. Sometimes this is my preferred method of navigating the world. Sometimes I don't want the rest of the world to reach me and am perfectly content with not needing to have any of the subtle interactions we do daily. It's a period that lacks misunderstanding from what a look or expression has, because it's no longer on display. When I'm ready, I can give the world that ability to connect to me again. There's something peaceful about that, having that control. I'm sure I'm just a weird duck, but apparently this feeling is heavily related to depression, which, if my consulting physician, Dr. Google, is correct, that explains a lot. With this piece, I wanted to expand the view of our club space and illustrate a beautiful and positive version of this feeling. I didn't want a full crowd of people, but I did want that feeling of a crowd. Like our work before, we start with our rough sketch and then we refine it. This is where I clearly had no idea what kind of pose I wanted and just needed the feeling to lead me. I now think that was a mistake. Prep work for creating art is something that might seem minuscule, but has become pretty important to me over time. There are plenty of welcome changes that come up in the middle of a project due to inspiration. Like I said last time, those are different. Even sitting down to do a sketch and being indecisive about your art there is fine because you weren't planning on it being a full art piece anyway. Even if after you start your sketch it becomes something more, that's all okay. Just go with it. You don't have to know everything about your art before starting, but if you intend on making a full creation, something with a message, and you don't even have the idea for your subject at least 60% fleshed out, your overall vision can and most likely will suffer. This happens to me multiple times throughout this piece, and it cost me a ton of time. I had references and still didn't know what I wanted to do. If I would have taken 30 minutes, an hour maybe, and figured out what my subject would be doing, I think I would have come out with an overall more satisfying result. I can say it positively because my indecision was deep-rooted. Look at this. I knew I wanted a woman here. I knew she would be dancing. And I knew there would be a background and foreground silhouette. Beyond that, I was indecisive of the pose, perspective, clothing. Even later, I wasn't sure what colors to use anymore. Reviewing this shows me right away that I was not ready for this piece. Even so, I'm so glad that I took it on. I'm so glad that I failed as much as I did. This gave me so much to work on in the future. I say not to do all these things, but that is only after doing and failing. I had to do that first because as I said before, failure is your roadmap to success. A lot of my issues with indecision were done by this point. We needed the background color now, and I wanted the lighting to be brighter and more lively. This gold color worked well, and so I went ahead and began the full character color fill and cleanup. Of course, the blending was next. Unlike the previous art, the background was integral to this piece. The essence of this would have been impossible to reach if we ignored the crowd completely. They needed to be present but disconnected from our focal point. This was something I had fun with. I hardly ever have a reason to create crowds, but there are ways to experiment and improve on the feeling here. In fact, there's so many possibilities here that I may honestly make this a study. The art of creating form without perfect definition and still playing with light and distance is pretty exciting. The same can be said for the foreground. Starting with such basic shapes to eventually mold them into suggestive forms that we look past or through in some ways pushes my perspective farther. This feeling is what I'm talking about when I reference failure in art. The elements that I'm excited to face and improve don't look terrible to me, but I have such a deeper understanding now of how to improve it that my drive to explore it is overflowing. Don't be surprised if you check IG and I'm teasing new studies on this right now. Now, we need to texture, and this is where the art takes a turn. Texturing makes me happy because it unveils the next step as far as making things look really good. You build the depth of the art, foreground, and background, then ultimately get to do the most exciting part, lighting. I honestly believe repetition and reference are key here. The more you experiment with the theory I proposed in the lip study, the better of a grasp you'll have on it. The light here makes everything pop and gives life to things that were previously not up to par. I may have started indecisive, but that in itself was the lesson of this piece of art. Make a decision, build a plan, execute. With a good enough plan, you will come out of the other side with an uncompromised vision. In your own space, with the right energy, you can feel.